Welcome back to the Awakening Conversations podcast. My name is Kate and I'm here with my co-host Amanda. It's the 14th of September 2025 and it has been an interesting time once again for us as we're traveling through this awakening experience we're going through as humans. Not only are we in the middle of an eclipse portal and some intense astrological energies out in the world stage, we are seeing some incredibly challenging things to see, namely this particular week, the death or assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's bringing up so much to the surface, and that's what we want to dive into today. The new phase that we have entered as human beings, as spiritual beings, what it means for us, what we're seeing, how this is showing us the progress we are making, even though it looks like complete and utter annihilation of the fabric of society and so much polarization, so much chaos, hate, judgment, fear, the works. While it looks like we've just entered into territory where it's getting worse, there is, we believe, this incredible middle place, this third way that is rising. First, we really want to talk about how this time is really showing us where we're being silenced, how we're also feeling the rage against that silencing, why your voice is so important, and why the times are just ripe for really powerful change, even though it looks like absolute chaos. So Amanda, it's been a challenging week to witness things out in the world, humanity, the sides that have been taken, the way people are responding to this particular situation. I know that you personally have an experience in your own life. You know, obviously, this is an American person, it's political, and we are seeing this left and right out here in my world in Japan. It's just, I sit back and watch the TV show America and, you know, ping pong match of the things that go on in that country. But for you, this is your lived experience of having a particular view politically in your own life that has changed, and then a way that you found a middle ground with that. Did you want to start by sharing a little bit about your experience with that, or did you want to start somewhere else?
My political experience?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a good
Yeah.
foundation. Yeah, I mean, I've shared here before that politics were a part of my awakening, specifically in 2016. If I were to say how I aligned previously to that, I was definitely a Democrat, someone who considered myself liberal. I thought that was the good and moral side. The other side was not good. Well, just like that binary, I was tapped into that. I was not aware of basically a third way, another way of operating in politics. I mean, I would say I was probably pretty surface level. And then I had an opportunity to see behind the curtain a bit in 2016. You know, Bernie Sanders got me really into paying attention to politics. I don't think I really truly followed a politician prior to that. I guess I sort of was like excited about Obama, but it was superficial. I had really no idea about his policies or anything like that. But Bernie Sanders, I think he did this for a lot of people, was he like opened people's eyes up to some of the issues of the system. So I started following him, and then I saw what was done to him, and it made me see that side of the aisle in a whole different way. And I look back, I'm kind of embarrassed to like see how I was like just arguing with people about politics and stuff. But anyways, 2016 was a year where a lot of people gave the system the middle finger and voted for someone completely was not in politics. So I think that was a sign of a lot of people being dissatisfied with the options of the system. And I mean, I didn't vote for Donald Trump, but I was pretty much like, I'm done with the Democrats. So my journey has been one where I have, since 2016, I've started to listen to people and less to like what the authorities are telling me who these people are. And I think, you know, that has come with like podcasts and where people have long form conversation and you can kind of read a human being based upon what are their words. Like, are they being truthful, or are they just like telling us what they think? Like that, I think that this era has allowed us to get to know the people better. And as we saw in like at the last election, it was the person that was willing to go on the podcast that won. So anyways, in 2020, I've shared before, I started looking at all the people that I was told I shouldn't look at. I started listening to them. I started with Donald Trump. I had a preface that I didn't vote for him because there's stigma around that. No, people
No.
voted for him, but I did not. I didn't vote. I don't live in the United States anymore. And thankfully, like for me, like that was part of me being able to detach from the system, was not get so invested in it, is by leaving, because I feel that it's broken. Anyway, so I started listening to people, and one of those people who someone we've talked about on this podcast is Candace Owens, and I've found her to be someone that is interested in truth, and that might take her in different directions. And people have their idea of who she is. Maybe you have listened to her and you have your opinion about her, but a lot of people listen to her and feel that she is after a better world for her children, and she's interested in calling out corruption. And she doesn't seem to be the things that they've painted her to be. And once you start doing that, you see that a lot of the people that get those labels are because they are calling out the system that are keeping us, I'm going to say, enslaved as human beings, that want to like us to live in fear. They want us to be sick. They want us to, be in fight or flight all the time. Like, these structures are not supporting people to live and flourish and become the most like actualized versions of themselves. She's someone who I feel is calling that out and wanting to create a world that is better for her kids and other people's kids too. So I say all that to say that I am someone who has been susceptible to the censorship propaganda machine that signals to us that this person's not okay to like. And so I have felt, even though you and I have talked about her, I still feel like a closeted fan of hers, because like people, like, you hear a name and there's an automatic reaction of, well, she's this, well, she's that. And I'm like, well, I'm not that. And so therefore I, it's something that I do in quiet, or I share with people that I trust. And talking about her here and sharing about her here is like an edge, right?
Yeah.
Because that is something that I've internalized as that's so bringing us to Charlie Kirk, right? Like, I would say that I didn't really know that much about him. I've heard things about him. He's Christian. He's associated with Turning Point USA. But the times that I have witnessed him, I only witness a positive, good-hearted person. And so I never had any negative feelings towards him. I did, like I told you earlier, I watched a debate that he hosted between someone that I follow and really respect, who is Dave Smith, who argues the side that what's happening in Israel is a travesty and should not be happening, against someone who is pro the Israeli side. And Charlie Kirk has been for on the Israeli side. So anyways, he brought these two people together, and I saw him host a really equal and fair debate, which, getting to who I think people saw him to be, is someone who is looking to bring people together in terms of dialogue and conversation. And so that's kind of been my experience with Charlie Kirk. And so when I heard that he was shot, I was sad, but then I also felt like I couldn't outright and share that I was sad, because the message is that he is racist, he's hateful, all these negative things is like the message that's coming out. And yet I was sad, because the only thing that I received from him was like, this is a decent human being that wants to make this world better, from what I've seen of him. And I've not seen those things that all these other people are saying.
Yeah. Hearing all of what you said, I really feel like leading up to this particular event happening, I was starting to witness in my own social media feed what I would say we can refer to as like a really clear like shift in timeline split is something that has been referred to, but also starting to see this really, really louder polarization of sides. I was starting to witness like there's a really beginning to be a very vocal group looking at life in this direction,
Hmm.
and then very vocal on the same situations, people viewing it in a completely different way, pro this, anti this situation in the middle. And that was really around at the time was RFK and his time working with, is it the CDC? Is that what it was?
Health and Human Services, which is like the umbrella of the CDC. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And the conversations around the vaccines. It was really interesting for me to sit back and like, wow, like it's so opposite. And here's this central thing in the middle, this theme and this really different views from people that, in one side, someone I really respect the work of, and yet it was kind of a shock for me to see her then anti the work he's doing. And then, on the other side, other people who I also follow, but then pro his choices and what he's pushing. And so in what you're just saying there, I have my own personal example of there's somebody I follow who I really like and enjoy their work and I appreciate it, and then has a view that doesn't align with mine. But that doesn't mean that I go and then just say, oh, well, screw her, I'm not going to follow her work anymore. I can be connected to someone or enjoy their work, purchase their work, because I see value in part of what she
Hmm.
shares, and I can allow her views on other things to be different. I don't need to judge her and then make her out to be a bad person, right? Because
Yeah.
we're different. We as humans we have differences, right? We look different. We live in different countries. We speak different languages. Difference is universal. And I think the big thing that's coming out of watching everything that's unfolding as the world has witnessed the death of Charlie Kirk is, again, we've got two sides debating who this man was and what did he stand for. And I was thinking about this morning and I thought to myself, well, yes, we have, especially for you guys in the US, there's distinct political parties, which separates the sense of what's right and what's wrong. It's just a constant battle
Yeah.
of weighing that out. And yet at the same time, every single human on this planet, not that everyone single human on this planet is watching this situation, but those that are and those that are being vocal about it, we're all watching this and viewing this from our own lens, right? Like no single human is experiencing this event the same way, right? Like
Hmm.
left has left lens and then their own personal lens, right has right lens and their own personal lens. Then there's people's values that come in and like paint their picture of what this means. So hearing you say that through your experiences of being someone who aligned to a set of ideals, began to question that, deciding actually I'm open to another side as well. I'm going to find my place in this sort of middle ground and let myself be a blend of voices and conversations and ideologies and beliefs and like form my own set for myself, but then feel trapped in being able to express that. This is what I think we really want to begin to start to talk about today as well, is like, well, how are we going to move forward in a world where we have these polarized views? Many of us are coming to this middle ground of being open to more than the two sides, considering both, forming broader definitions of things, allowing ourselves to hold many viewpoints and parts of someone's work, and maybe we don't agree fully, but we really do love this part of what they do. How do we in that middle ground move forward when speaking up to say that you believe in a broad set of ideas or can see both sides as having right or aligned parts? How do we
Hmm.
do that without that censorship that you talked about and like the fear of being shut down? Because the minute you speak about someone that you are able to come to understand them and value parts of what they do, and again, maybe not align with everything they say, how do we forward the conversation if we're not allowed to say that or fear saying that because you get shut down and labeled that you're this now and you're that now? What is our way forward here? Because this particular event is bringing up, I think, to kind of wrap this up is I've seen the pure left side, I've seen the pure right side, like having their commentary about what just happened. And really encouragingly, what I've also seen is this middle ground, this third way, people in the middle going, I'm sick to death of this polarization. How can we see this human that just died in a breadth of what he stood for? Yes, there's plenty of things that we may not agree with, but there's also something else at the heart of what he was doing. Like, I don't know the guy. I've only started to see little clips of him since this has happened. So I'm still, that is all coming into my field now, and it's slowly seeing different angles to it. But why do we have to vilify someone and label them as either this or that? Because this is a fracturing. If we go fully left or fully right, like that's chaos. And in the middle, if we can hold this middle ground, like this is where we get to move forward. And this middle ground, this place where if we can come to for conversation, like broad conversation, this is really where we're going to be able to move society forward, create this new earth forward. But how are we going to do that when we're afraid to speak up because of the backlash we get for speaking in a different way?
Yeah, it's become, and this has been happening for some time now, right? 2020, I took a break for like 2 or 3 months from social media. We were living at the beach at the time, and I felt called to read 1984. I remember I was walking on the beach and I had this download that people don't have a true sense of what the majority of people think, because most people are nuanced. Most people have a more central way of seeing the world. Maybe they see some things on one side, on other things it's the other side. And so what happens though is that they learn that if they bring up something that leans more towards one side, they get put in that box and they get labeled, And so it's easier just to be quiet than it is to say something and get jumped on and attacked. And so most people are quiet. Like the people that see things more moderately are just quiet because they've learned I talk, I get attacked. And so we have a warped sense of how most people view the world. And I don't post all the time on social media, but when something like this happens and I feel called to speak, it's oftentimes like, thank you so much for saying that, because this is what I feel. And it's people who aren't very vocal on social media, but it's like giving voice to what they feel. But they don't want to risk like getting the backlash. And something that I've been actually since our last, is it our last episode or 2 episodes ago, there was a comment that was basically that got on us because we dared to reference Candace Owens. It puts our reputation and our integrity, and like they were calling us into question because we would reference Candace Owens. And this person, I tried to speak back with them, and that wasn't even the intent of that conversation that we had. It was a piece of it, but it wasn't like the gist of our conversation. And I tried to respond, and it was like the response intensified, became more hostile. I tried again, and it got even more hostile. And at that point, I'm like, this person's just getting blocked from our channel because they're not actually interested in having a conversation. And in that moment, it occurred to me, I had a conversation with ChatGPT about this concept of, I'm going to say the concept of an NPC. So like the idea that there are people that are just absorbing the programming of the control structure, the control grid of like what's okay to speak. And they hear code words and, Candace Owens, you say this back to them. She said this, she said that. And so it's like, no one can say that like they like something about her, else you're going to get attacked because she's this. And if you like her, then that says something about who you are as a human being. And so it gets people to not talk about what those people are actually saying or what they're actually doing. And so, I was having this conversation like a week prior to all of this happening. So it was like fresh on my mind, this concept of these automatic responses of you say this, you get attacked with these words. You're for Charlie Kirk, he's hateful, he's racist, he's this, he's that, and he said this. Okay, where did he say it? They don't know because they didn't actually hear him say it, but they were told he said it. Do you know who's saying that in context too? No, they don't know. They just were told this is what you say about him versus like actually knowing who he, like did you listen to him speak, have conversations with people? And so I, I did a post about the Mr. Smith from The Matrix. And it's this idea that the programming that's here to shut down anything that deviates outside of the acceptable frame of society, of the rules, of the conversations that we're allowed to have. And what that does is it shuts down the nuance. It shuts down us being able to look at the center way. And I think in a long-winded way, I'm getting to the point where from this, I'm personally feeling fed up with the censorship that how I've censored myself to not have the Mr. Smiths come after me and put me in a box that I don't feel represents me, but I don't want to have to defend myself either. And so I've just been quiet. I didn't feel okay saying that, yeah, I was sad that a person got shot in the neck who I only saw to be the times that what I've seen of him, he was a decent, good human being that was trying to do good. I was sad. And so feeling a little bit angry. I have felt angry this week that these programmed people are trying to shut down people that are feeling sad about someone that was killed. And I think that the middle way that you're talking about is when people say, no more are we going to shape who we are out of fear of these programmed people that want to control us.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what I've seen so interestingly. Often when these events happen, and especially social media, it's the place where we witness the polarization, right? And you clearly see the two sides. It has actually been so eye-opening for me with this situation coming up, how much louder the middle voice is, because there's always been a middle voice in these things, but it's usually such a small fraction. You know, the two sides are usually the loudest, and then there's this one or two people in the middle going, I can see it in a broader way, you know, here's a third option. This time around, I almost feel like I can sense that the energetic of the middle way is a little bigger than the two sides. Interestingly, from people that, for me, was unexpected to see that third voice saying, I'm so sick of this polarization. This isn't going to move us forward. And more people coming to that space. And I really think that that's the encouraging part. As I've witnessed that this week, it's like, wow, here's a sign for me. This is my interpretation of it. Here's the sign that we are actually making progress. We're going through a big awakening as a collective. We're going through an ascension process. We are going through, as we've said, like a new earth is coming. We're going through a big change of the old breaking apart for the new to come. Really feel like this middle ground, this middle way is showing us that we have built something. We're setting ourselves some kind of foundation here where we're waking up and we're seeing it and we're saying, you know what, this polarization, this tearing apart, this isn't going to serve us. And I'm just loving seeing that there's that grounded voice in the middle of many people saying, we can't keep doing this polarized fight. You know, we have to come to a middle ground. And interestingly, Charlie Kirk seemed to be, you know, and I know nothing about the guy, open to the conversation. That was the very first things that I saw talked about in the few things that I saw when this all happened. How he invited dialogue. Okay, I've also seen how people say that was actually him just pushing his agendas. And I'm seeing a little bit where it was like, okay, he was very, very Christian. So there was a lot of talk about, you know, the Christian way. No problem. Okay, we don't all have to become Christians. But the dialogue part, the conversation, the opening of that, like, to me, the very first thing I saw of him describing why he has the conversations, like, that is this center way. We have to have conversation. We're never going to agree on everything. And that's also okay. And that is, I think, what we are embracing. It's not even a have to. There's a larger, you know, group of people who are just like you, like absolutely fed up with having to fight, having to defend, having to be quiet. I think those polarized sides, while you might feel dignified in your position, like there's a lot of hate that you have to hold against another, or the negative feeling, like it's the us and them tension. Like there's tension in that. There's not safety, so you don't feel okay, right? A lot of those feelings for the nervous system, for the body, for the mind, like they're very challenging to hold. That in and of itself kicks off the survival instinct of like, I've got to protect myself, and fear. It brings up and contains and perpetuates a feeling of fear. And we all know what it's like to be in fear. It's hard to just disconnect from. It's hard to feel the positives, see another perspective, because we're very much stuck in a survival mode when we really attach solidly to just one viewpoint. And I've said it several times in the last few conversations we've had, that I have had to open my eyes to see the bigger picture of what's going on here, and that we do have dark things happening. Evil is present in this world that we live in. But if I just say, no, this is my view, it's like this, I'm limited, I stay in the fear of seeing the thing, and I never have any power. But when we're able to look at everything, there is a sense of empowerment. But then it opens your eyes that there is more to this than just one way. I feel like that middle way, seeing it coming to life more and more in front of my eyes, is a sign of we're making progress, because it does feel like the dark is really fighting tooth and nail for its survival. And yet here we are, it's trying all its tactics, divide and conquer, set them up against each other. Separation is the tool. And yet this middle ground saying, no, we're done with that separation. I think if we can start to see that in our own lives, have the conversations with other people, come into that middle space, this is how we're going to move forward. This is how we're going to counter all of the challenge we've still got ahead of us, because we haven't even hit rock bottom yet. We've got to be in dialogue. We've got to be using our voices, and we have to hold the nuance. We have to be able to see the different perspectives. We also have to understand we're all different. We're never going to agree on everything. And that's great. That's how we can foster ideas. That's how we can have diversity. It's how we can have, true inclusivity. Like, we've got to be holding more options. There's not one right way, I guess, is, the thing we have to learn to be able to accept or appreciate or value.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the dark forces that are operating here, that separation and division has been a big part of, the the previous at least 5 years, more than that, but especially the last 5 years. And it's really amplified and intensified. What it has done is like it has reduced human beings to, are you a Trump supporter? Are you a
Yeah.
Democrat liberal? And it's like, I'm not playing that game anymore. There are people that are liberals that I appreciate and I like. There are people on the other side. Like, I lived in Portland, which is a very liberal place, right? And I thought I was like liberal before going there. And I'm like, no. My cousin came to visit and she's like, you're like granola one in the family. I'm like, I don't even feel granola here in Portland at all, because the granola level was so much higher. The granola spectrum was so much
That's
wider.
funny.
Anyways, then I moved to like a smaller college town that had rural aspects to it. And I had neighbors that I didn't know their politics, but they seemed probably like they were more conservative. And those neighbors were actually very friendly and I liked them and they did favors. They were neighborly and I'd not experienced that to that degree before. And it just shifted my idea of what I thought a conservative or Republican was. And so that started to shift my like hardcore liberalness that I had from living in Portland. But like going back, it's like, why are we reducing people
Yeah.
to these boxes? And let's reclaim our value as human beings are not a result of who we vote for. And it's really this game of like, let's build up the other side to be monsters. So if you support them, you're a monster too.
Mm.
You're a terrible human being. And I feel like that's what's been done for me to feel like I can't publicly like this person
Mm-hmm.
because this myth has been created that those that like that side with this.
Yeah.
And what comes to mind is that my grandmother, she left Spain when she was 2 years old. And that was 6 years prior to the Civil War happening in Spain, which wiped out, I don't know the numbers, but a lot of Spaniards. It was very bloody and brutal. And George Orwell was there. And that's where the inspiration for 1948 came from his experience there. And I've explored what it was like for people through that time, right? I lost my lineage because of that. My grandma and her family came to the United States and they assimilated in the United States. And my roots from that country, I don't know them because that was this connection was broken. I have left the United States. So it's like
Mm.
it's creating this like instability, right? Because what happens in civil war is that you don't trust your neighbors, you're
Yeah.
suspicious of people, right? You're turning people in, which we've seen. I feel like from what I've read, there's still remnants of what happened. The dictatorship in Spain went into the 70s, and it was this divide that does not just heal itself. And
Mm.
there's, from what I understand, like this collective shadow because it's kind of like we're just going to move on and we're not going to
Mm.
look at what happened. Yeah, what's happening here in the United States is maybe this could be the beginning of violent civil war, but the energetics of civil war are already there
Mm.
in terms of othering people, putting people in these boxes and not liking them because they're on the wrong side.
Mm.
It's already there. And like you said, like we haven't hit rock bottom yet. And so really this third way needs to come forward of like, I'm not going to choose sides. And I think when that happens, the idea of like, if we're going to use the Mr. Smith analogy, and it's easier online for this to happen, but it's like I'm not going to engage with people who are playing that duality, that polarized game. I blocked you because you're controlled by this programming, and I can't have conversation with you. I want to have conversations with people who actually are willing to have conversations. And I think the more that we have these actual conversations and we allow people to come out of hiding, like people are hiding, and
Mm.
there's a lot of hiding that happens in the Civil War because you have to hide how you truly feel. You can't actually say what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And so people hide. And so the
Mm-hmm.
more that we speak and like go beyond the sphere of being labeled one side or the other, granted, it can be dangerous, right? Like
Yeah.
when there is violent civil war, your life can be on the line. But if we don't do that before it gets, like, we need to do that before it gets to that place
Yeah.
where enough of us are willing to speak, enough of us are willing to say, this is the reasonable way. This is
Mm.
I'm willing to feel how I feel. To say that like, you shouldn't mourn a person because someone thinks a certain thing, like a certain way about that person because that's what they've been told is how we should be feeling about that person.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like people are having this very human experience, and there's this faction that's saying, no, you should not be feeling that way.
Yeah.
And I'm done being told how I should feel about
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. 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 Very well said. Yeah. I think the important thing here is that, this middle ground is the place where we really reclaim our power, right? It is where we stand up to the control, because it is control. And like you just said, you can't tell me how to feel. The middle ground is our humanity. That's our
Mm,
humanity right there in the middle. And then, much of what you just said there, I really thought to myself, well, like imagine if we didn't have words, like we were mute and we couldn't speak. Do you think we'd have a world where it was so so torn apart and so polarized if we didn't have language and labels and words. And because we attach meaning to words, right? They're just
Yeah.
sounds that come out of our mouths, right? But we have a mental capacity that takes, just like a swear word, right? It's just a word. But we have such like physical reactions to certain swear words. It's like, don't say that. That's disgusting. I don't want to hear it, right? It's a word. It sounds. Why do we let verbal, like sound, like literally, just because our brain can interpret it, we don't know what the bird's saying. We don't go, shut the fuck up, bird, you rude. You know what I mean? How
You
dare you
racist
say that?
bird.
You know what I mean? Like, who knows what the birds
Yeah.
are saying to us every single day? But you know what I mean? Like, it's a sound. And yet we let these words have such deep moral meaning. And, you know,
Yeah.
even to labels of our religions and our, like, we have these distinct feelings about a word, you know, that is the religious denominations, and it can incite so many emotional feelings within us. Like, let's stop and question that. Like, why do we let this languaging and labeling make us feel hate towards another? You know, why do we let ourselves be so divided? Can we hold space for all of it? Like, you know, if we don't hate each other and we just let each other have your views, you know, your religious, go about that, do what feels good for you. Like, let's let other people do that. Like, how do we get that? How can we bolster this middle ground? You know, I mean, this is a challenging conversation to have, and maybe our episode's gone all over the shop, but that's probably how people feel right now, right? Like, it's hard to talk about, and we're in the confusion part of all of this, and the questioning, and the, you know, there's something here, and we're trying to find what that is, and we're trying to find that sweet spot in our conversation today. But I just loved hearing you say you're done with letting your voice be silent too. You know, we want to be able to speak, we want to be able to share, we want to be able to see the world in a different way. And we have to question where we just lump someone into a label when they say something. Like, how about we consider the viewpoint? Why don't we ask questions? And, you know, it seems like Charlie Kirk did that. You know, maybe he's an example. You know, we had this conversation before we started recording too, that he came here to do certain work as a soul, right? He was very vocal about it. He was sort of helping to create a movement. I don't know what that was. Some people align with it, some people don't. Obviously, we've had that conversation. But at the same time, I do think that on a soul level, his leaving right now in the fashion that he just left, and the events that are unfolding and the polarization that's unfolding, and us witnessing there's also a third way, it's part of his soul's journey. You know what I mean? Like, we do choose our exit points. And, you know, at a soul level, while this does look like, how could someone stop him doing the work he's doing? His work really begins now. You know what I mean? Like,
It's living on.
yeah, right. Like, that's the power of what his life meant, and whatever he did and whatever he said, good, bad, against what you believe, for what you believe, whatever. Look at what the impact of his death is bringing to the surface, you know? And so in many ways, that soul's journey, like, this is what he came here to do, was for his death. Like, his passing, his bringing all of this fodder to the surface for us to choose again. Like, choose. What are we choosing? Because this path that we're going down with the divide is just going to further the chaos, or we can choose that middle ground. And what do we need to look at in ourselves to be open to the middle ground? Are you in the middle ground already? How can you continue to, you know, be in conversation with people, start to understand new perspectives, let there be differences between you and your neighbor, but be friendly with them? You know, how can we foster less hate within ourselves and just be more open? And we don't have to agree. You know, I think really what this tragedy is showing us is that there's a middle way. And you know, in some ways, like him or don't like him, he showed how to have conversation. And I think that's the legacy that he's leaving, is just be open to a conversation. You don't have to agree, you know, and not everyone's going to like what you think. But does that have to be like end in hate? And, you know, I don't want to hear another word you say. In some cases, like you said, there's going to be people who are just only going to hold this, but that's going to be the people out here on the left and the people on the right. But those of us that can come into that middle way and hold nuance, the more of us that can do it, you know, we're going to be the ones helping to move things forward. That's the feeling that I have of, like, this is the evidence that we have got something good happening while all the other things are breaking down, falling apart, they're crumbling. We are setting some kind of new foundation here. That's all we're going to have as we move through this challenging period of time. And as I said, there's more to come. I just know it. We haven't hit it yet. But this middle ground, whatever that is, that's the place where we're going to find our stability through more and more of that challenge.
You said a lot there.
Yeah.
What you said about the language was so interesting. Because what happens when we don't have language that would require us to actually feel what we feel versus what we're told we should be feeling? Because if we can't be told anything, we just feel what we feel. And those words get in the way of, we're programmed in the mind of how we should be responding to a person versus just sensing. And that's turned off when the mind is running the show. And that's what I was just explaining of like, I feel this way, but there's something in my mind telling me I shouldn't feel this way.
Yeah.
And so I'm like overriding my feelings.
Yeah.
And how many people have turned off their feelings because of their minds, right? And another thing is that you mentioned his exit point. I watched Candace Owens' episode about him. And she basically told the story, the journey of their relationship. And he started when he was 18 years old. He started this organization, Turning Point USA, to do what he did in such a short, like to have the impact that he had in like 13 years of his life. And to have impacted those he has impacted, that's the work that he's done. Like that's going to be the proof of who he was, right? Like, what do people do with that? And hopefully people continue on this idea of conversation, right? Like, what do they learn? Like, that we need conversation because has been removed from the normal way of doing things. I watched a video of him guide a father and a son through his conversation. I'm like, gosh, he's so mature for like to guide this boomer father with a young son, the father liberal and not able to understand why his son is more right leaning. And he bridged the gap because he said the most important thing is your relationship, not who's right and not who's left. It's your relationship. And he explained to them, I understand to the father why you see things the way you see things because you're from a generation that trusted government. And he said to the son, and you're from a generation that has seen government do awful things and is not taking care of its people. And that's why you say things the way you are. So do you guys get each other? Because they're like, we don't get each other. Like we can't, we're just at each other's throats because like we love each other, but we cannot get along. And, he's sitting in a tent. They come up to the microphone right there. He bridged his father and their son. And like, that's the most important relationship. That's the most important thing here is not who's right or who's wrong. It's like, it's your relationship. And I think that's something that has been lost in the United States is like trying to understand where the other person is coming from.
Yeah.
And like, I can see why you see things that way. And I don't see things that way, but I understand now. And if we don't allow each other to share how they feel, and if we just have learned to shut that down, like, I don't feel safe sharing this. We can't get that why someone would be different than why we are the way we are. And then we're more likely to play this attacking game when someone doesn't see things the way we see things. And so anyways, I've seen just like a fraction of what he has done, but I think that could be a template of like, how do we relearn how to have difficult conversations and try to understand each other and understand someone that sees things radically different than we do. If we can understand, it's like there's a reason why they see things that way because it's their journey. And the more we accept others, the more we accept ourselves. And the more we accept ourselves, the more we accept others. We have to cultivate this new way of doing things. And so, like, could this be a template for how we can move forward, because really we need to come to communication from this feeling place, right? Like,
Mm. Mhm.
um, and what else was the other thing that I wanted to share? Yeah, so for those of you who are listening that have listened to previous episodes, we've been critical of Aubrey Marcus and Mark Gaffney, and I still think our criticisms are valid. But in this vulnerable place that I found myself in witnessing the reactions from a lot of people, it has felt like hate from a lot of people, like this energy of hatred. And just, I don't want to exist in that. I don't want to play that game that is perpetuating hate. And
Mm.
so that's kind of where I've been. And then Aubrey put out a video on Instagram, and I only saw a portion of it because Instagram was like glitchy at that moment in time. And so I saw maybe like a minute of it. But I felt that he was like genuinely being sincere in his video, and he was expressing feelings. And from my vulnerable feeling place, I felt him, and it cut off. And then I went to the comments, and I was just so disheartened to see the pile on continue and of him. And I realized, I'm like, am I part of that? Am I a part of that energy? And we haven't talked about the Align podcast that he did, where he spoke about people, like all of the responses being hateful, right? They were just him receiving a lot of hate. And, you and I both watched that, and we're like, well, we don't feel like we were coming from a place of hate.
Mm.
We feel like we were bringing up things that were worthy of being seen. And so it felt like he really wasn't listening, because he was just receiving them all as hate. And then from in that moment of looking at those comments of just like how hard
Mm.
people were going at him in that moment in time, I was like, man, okay, maybe this is what he means by like receiving hate, because he just is not catching a break, I think, from people, and it must be exhausting. And what I felt when I was watching him is like, I would be extremely sad if this were to happen to Aubrey Marcus. I don't
Mm.
have hate towards him. Yes, I would like him to address some of the things that we've spoken to. And I don't want him to feel like we're directing hate at him, because that's not the energy that I don't think we want to exist in or come from. And so, in the fashion of what Charlie Kirk was trying to do, how do we have these conversations rather than like making these videos about a person? Is there a way to have the dialogue? Yeah, that was just my experience of like, am I part of this problem, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
am I playing in that hatred match? I don't, that's not my goal.
Yeah. And this is, an opportunity for us all, like all of it is, right? We reflect on where we hold any of these energies within us. Do we, it's easy to say, okay, maybe for this situation that, I can be in the middle ground because I don't really know Charlie Kirk. I don't have a left or a right view. But where else in my life do I side somewhere and like think someone is something or a situation is a certain way, and is it black and white? And can I broaden my perspective? I think the really important thing here is to keep saying that doesn't mean we agree. It doesn't also mean that we don't say anything or speak up or be verbal
Yeah.
about a different view. You know, it's not a rollover and just accept it as it is and like whatever, right? This isn't
Yeah.
passive. It's integrity, and it's aligning to your truth and your values and expressing them, because I think the only way we're going to move forward is if we do check in, and then we do align with what's real and true for us. And we're verbal about that. Call out what is, the darkness and the evil, because it does exist, and I think that's been the big journey for me, is like, it's the using of my voice, because, there's challenging things to witness and experience. This conversation's one of them. And, as we've been talking and, stumbling around having this conversation, where do we go? What do we say? What are people going to think? Because it's laced in it, right? This is such murky territory in so many ways, right? And you said, could this be a new template for how to have conversations? Like, there's so much we can take away from this. Like, could we just start to have more conversations and allow, like you said, in that situation, relationships, the connections we have are the most important, and allowing ourselves to have differing views. But that doesn't mean shut down, don't say anything, but like just always seek to understand and seek to agree to disagree, that doesn't have to hold hate. And I think the mind, when we talk about the mind, like what a challenging thing for humans to have, because it's such it almost, in these situations, we can see how weak it is, or how almost like it's what's the word I'm trying to say here? Like it's almost like a disability to have one. We'd be better off without one. If we were just feeling beings, we would maybe express in completely different ways. I don't know, it's through the mind and the imagination that we can create things, but it's also it's brilliant, and it's also not brilliant at the same time. My brain's not thinking. Liability. There's a great word. Yes. We've got to be aware of our minds. We've got to be aware of what we're thinking and believing and listening to. And are we, processing that? Are we questioning that? Are we seeking to broaden the words that come out of our mouths? So many times I hear, the older generation just say these phrases that it's like, do you just repeat that because you've heard that your whole life? Or do you stop to question, is that true? Every time I hear it, I'm like,
Yeah.
That's not true for me. And that's not going to be my reality, even though that's your lived experience. I don't think there's always the questioning. It's just, that's what we say in these situations, and that's how it is. Or that phrase in and of itself, that's just how it is. I'm like, is
second
it?
time today someone said that to me, as far as like, I don't accept that's this the way it is. Yeah.
No, right? Like,
and
that's the mind just
that's
going, that's how it is, right? Just, yeah, we're coming up to time here. We've gone a lot of places, not in the most, I think, connected way, but this is the challenge of trying to have a conversation about challenging topics where there's so much emotion and judgment and hate and fear and all of it, right? Like, this is part of why I think people don't say anything. We'd love to have been super clear and or at least myself, like super clear and have the point and, like say these wild and wonderful things that, unlock things for people. But
you did.
well,
You did say
hopefully, it's just challenging to talk about, and like let it be messy. I think is something I wanted to say is like, even as we go about engaging in conversation with other people, like it doesn't have to feel like it was you resolve anything, but let's just talk and seek to understand other people. There's so many things going through my mind in this moment while I'm trying to talk that it's hard to say things because I'm questioning as I'm even saying things. But maybe we can do a follow-up episode and all the things that come from this.
We're trying to like censor and filter and judge ourselves and like want it to come out like in a polished way versus just like being raw, and like our words matter. And at the same time, there's like this double-edged sword with that, where people are just afraid to say anything because they don't want to get burned at the stake for saying it the wrong way, or you said it about this person but you didn't say about this person. And and so it's like there's no grace for people, and so people are just like, it wears people down to have to censor all the time and be afraid of what happens if I say the wrong thing, but easier just not to say anything. And then people are disconnected and isolated, and then they're more easily manipulated because they don't really know like what people are, am I the only person that feels this way? And then there's this lack of cohesion between people because they don't realize that it's like, oh, you're feeling that same way too. I'm not alone in this crazy world. And so the more that we talk, the more that we see like how many people are seeing it how we see it. And so I think that the Agent Smiths just like disappear the more that we start having these conversations and not willing to be imperfect, willing to
Mm.
sound, because it is a muscle, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
muscle to begin to speak again and share your thoughts. And like, what do you truly think?
Mm.
Because we learn in school, like there's an answer and
Mm.
not to share what you think, but what
Mm.
is the answer? Like
What's
we're
right?
trained that school does that.
Mm.
And so it's like this, like, unless you do like something where you're asked to really let come through what's your authentic ideas and way of seeing things, and like it's a practice that I think a lot of people are not utilizing or practicing a practice they're not
Mm.
practicing like on a regular basis because of everything that we just spoken about here. And so the more that we do it, the more that we have conversation. Like I was having tea with someone today, and we were talking about social media and how like the reasons why we post, or the reasons why, like, what are we looking for? Like, is that really a good medium to have true conversations? And she was like, I'd much rather have a conversation like this where I can actually say
Yeah.
what I think. I don't have to censor myself. And then I was like, you know what? The podcast has actually been such a wonderful vehicle to allow us to really understand ourselves better, because created a container where we allow ourselves to speak out how we feel. And
Mm.
at first, there's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of filtering going on.
Mm.
I don't like the way I talk. Like I
Mhm.
say like too much. I say too much. Criticism.
Mm.
But the more you do it, it
Mm.
becomes like I don't cringe at my hearing myself anymore, which I do a little bit, but not like I did at the beginning. I was like, I don't want to edit it because I don't want to hear myself talk. And how terrible is that we don't want to hear ourselves talk? And so
Mhm.
then we stay quiet. And I really feel like the way forward, we've said it so many times on this podcast, but the way forward is using our voice. And that's how we take our power back. And the things that are happening in the world are all these opportunities. This moment in time is an opportunity to reclaim part of our censored self that we've
Yeah.
suppressed and we've allowed ourselves to keep contained because we feared what happens if we do allow what's in our head to come out. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, this is sad, and the effects of it are for us. And as you spoke about, is that middle way of us reclaiming that part of us that we've contained and not allowed ourselves to express because of fear. And
Mhm.
let's not allow fear to win anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a perfect place to pause. So let's just wrap it up here and invite commentary in the comments, and let's see what.
True conversation,
Let's have
like
conversation. Yeah.
authentic, like good natured, good faith, not trying to, you know, blocking actually felt kind of good, and I'm okay to do it. So
Yeah,
I think
but
it's good.
and that
You know what I mean?
happened
Like
because
from
it
I
wasn't conversation. It was just
exactly.
yeah, like let's have conversations. For those of you who'd like to have one, let's do that in the comments and share your experiences and around this, and if you experience this middle way or what's this brought up for you, this particular event. And yeah, we're incredibly challenging times, and it's a wild ride, and nobody really knows what's going on. So it's okay. It's okay.
It's all gonna be
Let's just
okay
chat.
too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. We're gonna get somewhere, but you have an opportunity to find a way to navigate that, and your voice and your mind are part of that. So thank you, Amanda, for this conversation.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll join you in the next episode.